It's great to be here, and I want to talk a little bit tonight about innovation and what's going on in the ed tech market. It's a great place to start because lots and lots of deals are going on, lots of companies are getting investment, and I'm seeing some great growth here in Philadelphia. When I came here 2.5 years ago, I could identify 6 or 7 people that I'd sort of call ed tech, and in our last count there were close to 70 or 80 companies that I can now give you in a database. So lots of things going on. So let's talk about innovation first and what's going on in education. Right now education's at a crossroads because of the following 5 or 6 things. One is accountability. There's lots of testing. Everybody wants to know what kids know. We are getting ready to release 2 online testing systems. Disaster is coming. So there's lots of opportunity there to come in after the disaster. I don't know if you all read the Forbes article on Pearson, but it was not a very, very nice article because of the whole testing fiasco. The government has allocated $1 billion, $750 million to 2 testing companies to build the next generation of accountability testing. So lots of opportunity there. We were seeing a great move from the physical or the print to the digital. Textbooks, Pearson, if you read that article, lost 26% of their revenue, was down from their textbook business. But now 60% of their revenue comes from digital products. There's a big cost pressure because of the open movement. Everybody says, oh, just use open education. You don't need to pay for anything. Well, that's great. There's lots of open out there, but 99.9% of the teachers we train in this country never take an instructional design course. So it's nice that they can go out and find a video, or they can find a PDF to read, or they can go to a website. But they don't know how to take that material, blend it together, create the scaffolding that it takes to learn. So lots of cost pressure and openness is changing the way we think about curriculum. Obviously, everybody wants personalized learning today. So you're going to see a great movement in that area. And finally, globalization. You're going to see lots of things going on in the global market that's going to impact what we do here. So basically, it's kind of hard to innovate in the old knowledge space. Most of us in this room, and I think we have a nice group of people from about 5 years old to about 85 years old. So we are really lucky that this industry is attracting a large group of people. But it's really hard. Most of us have learned in a linear knowledge space. That means we start on page 1 of something, we read to page 350, we give a test, and we say you've learned that information. And that's because we have learned from a book model. But today learners are in this new knowledge space. It's called a random knowledge space, and it's changing the way we think about information, the way we think about knowledge, and the way we think about delivering knowledge. Most of the most interesting things I've seen in the last 3 to 6 months are things that are giving bites of information, just-in-time learning, aggregating it in new ways. Well, we have a problem, though. Educators still persist with this myth that I'll be happy to give you innovative thinking, but what are the guidelines? So all of us live in a world where we live in a box, and we think we're innovating, but we're innovating within a very, very closed box. So how do we change schools and teachers and learners to think out of that box and do innovative things? So the market is kind of adjusting to all of this that's changing. So let's talk about the ed tech market. It's growing very, very fast. In 2012, the e-learning market, or the digital learning market, people call it different things, was $32.5 billion. In 2017, the U.S. e-learning market was $65.6 billion is the projection. The annual growth rate is expected in the next 4 years globally to be 23%. And they expect that the global e-learning market will grow to $166 billion. And currently, this market is less than 5% of the total education budget or spending of $1.3 trillion. Big market. So you can see that it's growing fast between the U.S. spending and the U.S. digital spending. And I suspect that this is actually very conservative. You're going to see a lot more growth in this space. You're going to see that it's going to grow not only in the amount of learning that takes place, but across the different sectors. They seem to be growing about equally at the same rate. The K through 12 market is at 4%. The higher ed market, woo, what did I do? Did I? Okay, hold on.
Improvise.
Okay, I'm going to improvise. Okay. Oh, there we go. Good. Okay. All right. So but what's even more interesting for why you all are here tonight is that the investment by VCs and angels topped $500 million in Q1 of 2014, and it's even larger projection for what it will reach this Q1 of 2015. You can see that this includes both VCs, large stage VCs, as well as early stage. Early stage in the Q1 last year was about equal. I think you're going to see a drop, and there's going to be a flip in that model. You're going to see in this quarter that there's more later stage companies getting money than later stage, by I mean Series A, not angel money, but rather than the angel money. What also happened, which is interesting to observe, is that the angel rounds have been much, much larger than they used to be. We used to think of an angel round as being somewhere between 100,000 to maybe 500,000. You're seeing angel rounds now between 750 and $1 million because there's lots and lots of investors out there that want to do this. And I kind of call this the do good, do well syndrome. They really want to invest either in ed tech, health tech, med tech, or green tech. And so you happen to be in a very sweet spot if you're building something in ed tech. And we look at ed tech across all verticals, so medical, health, anything that's going to address teachers, students, and learners. So there's been many, many recent ed tech exits. These were the ones that I've listed up here are small, and they've been over the last couple of years. This is probably not completely up to date because I only did this one through the end of 2013. But I can tell you that there's also been some very, very large ed tech exits in the last 12 months. McGraw-Hill was bought out, took off the public market by Apollo Private Equity for multi-billions of dollars. Renaissance Learning was taken off the public market by Hillman Friedman for $1.2 billion. Skillsoft, which is a corporate training company, was bought off the public market by Charterhouse for $2.2 billion. And TES Global, which is a UK-based company for K-12, was bought by Texas Pacific Group, which is a really unusual investment for them, for $650 million. So you're going to see a lot of very interesting acquisitions at both ends of the spectrum, as well as investments. These are the leading acquirers in the space right now, other than the ones I mentioned that happen to be in the private equity space, but Pearson is buying quite a bit. Houghton Mifflin has bought companies recently. Rosetta Stone. Currently, McGraw-Hill seems to be the fastest acquirer of K through 12 education companies. In the last 4 to 6 months, they've bought 6 companies, the largest of which was Ngrade, which was basically a grade reporting company. Macmillan New Ventures is doing some very interesting things. They bought Late Night Labs, so you're going to see some interesting early stage. That was an early stage company. I actually saw them at one of the early stage incubators. Desire to Learn raised $75 million and turned around and made several acquisitions in the last year. Hobson's is a British-based company, was owned by the Daily Mail Group. I think it might still be partially owned by Daily Mail. They've been buying companies. And Plato Learning has been buying and merged with Archipelago for $300 million. And Blackboard bought Moodle Rooms, and they just made 2 other recent acquisitions in this last year. So lots going on in the space, both from big players to little players. there's lots of innovation capital available, and there's actually a large number of VC firms dedicated solely to education. These are just some of them. New Schools Venture Fund. I don't know how many of you know about New Schools Venture Fund. It was a non-profit fund. It ran out of a non-profit organization. They just announced that they were spinning it out to its own fund into a for-profit early stage fund. Learn Capital raised $150 million from the IFC last month, and they are investing in Latino and Latin American companies with the IFC. The Macmillan New Ventures is based out of Britain, but their venture group is out of New York. In addition, you have Al Ventures, which isn't up there. You have Rethink Education, which is Matt Greenfield, and a significant other of companies that are not only education but do other things are listed at the bottom of the screen here. I'll be glad to share the PowerPoint with anybody that wants it. There are 200 U.S. private equity firms that have made significant investments in education, in the education space, even if they're not solely an education company. The interesting thing about this chart is what you would expect. The number, 36% of the money is going into schools. So that's reflected in the charter school movement, in rethinking and redesigning schools, both those that are public and those that are private. So, but then the next largest two spaces are in the area of services and then ed tech. So ed tech is growing. This was from 2013, the end of 2014, and I think you're going to see that this will change significantly. There also are a large number of accelerators that are playing a key role at the seed stage. And many of you have heard about accelerators, spoke to me about whether you should join an accelerator, whether you should join one that is just education or one that addresses all technology companies. And I think there's pros and cons on both sides. I wouldn't suggest that if you're an ed tech company, you only join an education accelerator. I wouldn't suggest that you have to join one that's got multiple companies. I think that if you're looking for a group that understands the education market, the space, then you might want to consider an education accelerator. If you're looking for one that's more tech-oriented, can help you with a lot of the technology issues that you're facing, and many of our ed tech companies need this, you're probably going to find more access to that in another kind of accelerator. Some of these that you've probably heard about is the one in Silicon Valley, Imagine K-12. It's the education accelerator of Y Combinator. They have produced some phenomenal education companies, and they will continue to, I think, attract a large number of companies. In Boston, you have Learn Launch. The woman that funds Learn Launch is a woman by the name of Jean Hammond. If you can get a meeting with her, you should take it. She's the largest angel investor in the country. She's done over 120 deals in education and ed tech companies. New York City, you have Kaplan, the Kaplan Techstars Ed Tech Accelerator. In the Midwest, you have Kauffman, an Impact Engine, and a new one has just been announced that's being run by DeVry, so it's coming out of a for-profit university. It's called 1871, and it's a education vertical accelerator. In Washington, D.C., you have 1776 and Jefferson, again, another new accelerator just for education that the University of Virginia is in partnership with. And here in Philadelphia, we have EDSi, the Education Design Studio, at which we run out of Penn. We'll talk about a little bit. So lots going on in this space, and globally you have a large number of accelerators also. In Israel you have the Center for Education Technology. In France you have Ed21, and I don't know how to say that in French. And in London you have Emerge. And in Canada you have Mars, which is in affiliation with the University of Toronto. And in Australia, in affiliation with the large telecom there, you have EdSpark. So there are large, and these are not the only countries. I haven't even talked about those that are in Latin America that are getting large amounts of funding. There's a real problem with accelerators. I think they're a great thing, and I think they provide a space for looking for capital to take you from very early stage to what I call transition funding, because usually when you finish an accelerator, you're not absolutely ready for a Series A round, particularly since they've grown so large lately. Series A rounds are looking at $1.5 million to $4 or $5 million. That would have been considered a Series B or C in the past. So you're going to see a large number of these growing to help along with this, and globally you see even more of those. And I think you're going to, the problem being that are they themselves sustainable? And when we did some research on EDSi the first year, one of the aha findings that we found out, because remember, EDSi is affiliated with the University of Pennsylvania, we of course have to do research, that otherwise I wouldn't have a job. So we found out in one of our aha moments that these accelerators are often startups by themselves. So the first year we ran this, we had great people. They knew what they were doing around startups. They had done investment, but we'd never run an accelerator. So we learned a lot, that we were a startup trying to work with startups. So that was a big learning. So in looking at these accelerators, somebody's got to start up. But you're not seeing a whole lot of new ones starting with the same model, because they're hard to sustain. Where do you get the money to run an accelerator? Because the chance of getting a return on your money is pretty weak. You're not going to get a return when the basic VC is only getting a return on 1 out of 10 companies, and they're not getting very high returns. So how do you make the accelerator itself sustainable? You have to pick great companies. So what are the characteristics of what's going on in this acquisitive industry? And why is there so much acquisition going on? And when should you decide you want to be acquired? Many of you are starting new companies. You've put hundreds and hundreds and thousands of hours into building your company, as we call sweat equity into it. You have lived on pizza and slept on a friend's couch. And if somebody were to come to you tomorrow and say, I love what you're doing and I'll pay you $1 million for it, should you take it? And at what point do you not take that? And what is it that makes these large companies begin to look at earlier and earlier stage companies? And a couple of things are showing up. You can read through the chart, but there's a couple I want to talk about. One is that, as we already pointed out, is the market size is very, very large. So these companies that have just been acquired by private equity groups for billions of dollars, those companies now have to figure out how they're going to pay these investors back. How are they going to make money? And it's not going to come from organic growth. It's going to come from acquisitions. And so they have to go in and look, how much acquisition, what do I need to pay to get enough to the bottom line to satisfy Apollo or to satisfy Hillman Friedman. So they're out there balancing, well, if I can buy this for $15 million and in 2 years it's going to generate $50 million for me, then this is a good buy for me. It goes right to the bottom line. I didn't have to put anything into building it. I might have to put some marketing costs in. It's a great buy. But on the other hand, what if you, as the entrepreneur, you're seeing a hockey stick growth in your distribution? You may not have a whole lot of revenue on your bottom line, but you are seeing growth and interest in your company. So at what point do you decide, I really think my company's worth $50 million, because that's what they're going to put to the bottom line, and how do you convince a Pearson or a McGraw-Hill that they should pay you $50 million for your company, and at what point? And finally, how many of you think you are big enough or will be big enough to go IPO? And how many education companies have actually gone IPO in the last 5 years? You can put them on one hand. The most recent two in the last year was Chegg, which was a used book company, and 2U, which is an online learning company. The other thing I want to point out on here is that we're in an acquisition ecosystem that's now looking at more people that are thinking about acquisition. It used to be the entrepreneur and the banker or the company, and the banker was the middleman. So Pearson would hire a banker, and that banker would go out and look around. They'd charge Pearson a lot of money to do that, and guess what? Pearson would buy you, and the banker was the only one that made any money. So, but you're seeing a change in that model. You're seeing the fact that now we have a new ecosystem that puts the entrepreneur in a banker stage. Most entrepreneurs now become pretty savvy about the market and what they think they can be bought for. They probably don't have it all right, but they have more knowledge. And now bankers, when you walk into a VC meeting, it used to be that you kind of were at their mercy. They told you X and you believed it. Well, now the bankers are saying, stop reading the internet. Just let me do it for you, because the entrepreneurs are pretty savvy. So you have entrepreneurs in this ecosystem. You actually have the school districts and the school systems and the universities in this system. So you have multiple universities starting venture funds. Drexel has one that they've done over at the Science Center that have put into it. So if you go through this, you're going to see that the universities are now playing a role in this. And you also have school districts playing a role in this, that they're investing in the companies that they're using. This has both good and bad consequences. I don't know if any of you have been following the big debate in Chicago. Deborah Quazzo, who is a partner with GSV, she's been all over the Chicago Tribune because she's on the school board. And the school board, the union people, are raising a stink that she's invested in all these early stage startups, and she's giving that to the school district because, remember, as an early stage startup, you want as much exposure as you can get. It's not the dollar, it's also the usage. And now the Tribune has been all over her to resign from the school board, and was it ethical and moral? And so there is some issues related to the investor side. And then finally you have what I call the foundations and the other people that are now playing in this space. So this whole ecosystem has changed. It's not just the banker buying or telling you what they're going to invest or telling their company what to buy. And then finally, the other one I want to point out is the last one. Early stage investors exist. They didn't have so much of that before. In the education space, there's always been angels. But in the education space, it's a relatively new phenomena. And it's not just your uncle that made a little bit of money and education feels good or they want to do it. It's lots and lots of early stage angels out there. Just have to find the right one. And follow-on capital has been more identified than it's ever been. I can tell you over the last 25 years of being an investor in ed tech companies very early on, I couldn't ever go into an early stage company and they wouldn't know the name of one investor. Now they walk in my office or come to EDSi and they want to know if I can introduce them to so-and-so, and then they list off all of the venture firms that are investing. So they've done their homework. So what's the outlook for 2015? Where do I see, and I don't have a crystal ball, so this is worth about as much as I'm being paid to speak here for, so take it for that value. So I think there's 4 areas that you're going to see a big opportunity in. And this is based on reading the journal, seeing where the investments are going, and most of it's based on looking at companies and finding the ones that I like and kind of grouping them into the area that we want. One is, I think you're going to see a lot of money going into the visualization of data. There's been a large number of companies like Bright Bytes and Youngo that have raised over $20 to $25 million. Big data was a big thing in the last 5 years of investment, both on the tech, just tech in general, but nobody figured out how to visualize it. So now we got all this big data that we want teachers to look at, but we haven't given them a way to easily look at it and apply it. So you'll see a lot more building of recommendation engines based on the data. You're going to see a lot of more recommended search engines that help people use the back-end data, the big data, and visualize it for them. And so actually, I hear these companies all the time, and there's actually 2 or 3 really interesting ones right here in Philadelphia in this space.
In the classroom?
In the classroom, yes. So teachers need this. They need to know all this data they're given. They need to know what assignment to make. They need to know what kids, if they're gifted kids, how to group them. If they need remediation, how does it match up to Common Core? So all that data is being analyzed on the back end. It's been that way for a long time, but only the big Pearsons were doing that. Now I have lots of really neat startups looking at data in new ways and visualizing it. Second area, OER models. All of a sudden, including McGraw-Hill and all the big companies, are looking at how do we make OER into sustainable business models. And you can look at companies like, Open Education Resources. Okay. Yes, and so that's the area of how do we make it sustainable. And then finally, the other two are the aggregation of content. Lots and lots of more people, lots of more companies are putting together content in new ways. And then online learning and MOOCs. I think MOOCs are on the way out. They're all trying to reinvent themselves, but they're still not going to go away because they're going to morph into a more general, what we were doing in online learning in better ways. So what's Penn doing? We've got multiple things going on. We run the largest purely business education competition in the world, and it's out of a school of education, not out of a business school. Our application process is open right now. It closes on the 24th. If you go to our site, you will find, if you go to the website Ed Competition, you'll see how to apply. It's very simple. We run the Education Design Studio, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. We run a new Master's in Education for education entrepreneurs. It's the first Master's in the U.S. for purely people that want to study entrepreneurship in education. We do a lot of research around the education ecosystem, so we have lots and lots of data about our companies and what they look like and what they're doing, and we're still trying to figure out how to report on that data. We run a new program for virtual online teaching, and finally we are working on an executive program to help athletes that want to go into education. So I'm going to pass on this topic, but we will be talking a little bit more about Education Design Studio a little bit later this evening. And our master's program, if you go to our site, you'll find out all the information on it. And our business plan competition is both, by the way, for early idea generation as well as more advanced ventures. The winners of our business plan competition and the finalists and semifinalists are invited to apply for our design studio. So we pick most of our companies come from the winners from the business plan competition. We give away $150,000 in prize money. It's not equity, and my worry was that when I gave you that check, I didn't know if you were going to take it and go on a cruise. But it's money that you win for presenting, not for what you do. So, great. I'm glad to be here and share with you the marketplace.
Questions. Let's take this microphone here so everyone can listen.
And Bobbi, also, if you could repeat the question, the recording, the video recording can capture.
Okay, sure.
My name is Jenny. I'm a business broker. My son is 9th grade, and he's in a high school student, and he will get iPad soon, maybe next year. But I'm very unhappy with it because of concerning about electromagnetic radiation. I don't know, have you ever heard about that? Yeah, so from the cell phone, from laptop, from all the tablets. So I know technology makes kids very smart because they can access the information very quickly. No matter, they can find anything online, but my major concern is a lot of parents think the electromagnetic radiation can really hurt their DNA, their brain, their eyes, everything. So I also am suffering from that somehow because I'm a business broker. I use my cell phone all the time. I can't use it anymore. So I use now like this. I use this. Okay. So
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, the question
is there any technology company who's inventing something better without like a radiation effect, I would find an investor with all my heart.
Okay, that's not my area of expertise, but I can tell you that there's a lot of data that shows very few people are holding their phone up to their ear anymore. They're using an earbud. So I think you're going to see less of that being a problem, but I don't know. It's not my area of expertise. But good luck. If you find it, let us know.
Anybody who's willing to invent it, please tell me. I will find investor. Really, I'm serious.
Okay, great. Hi.
I just want to say that was a fabulous presentation.
Thank you.
You're very smart and interesting, and it was like really eye-opening.
Thank you.
My question is, you said that you could share the presentation. How, like, do we give you our email address? Like, how would we do
I'm
that?
assuming there's a site we can put it on. But
Okay, cool. Thank
okay,
you.
great.
And it'll be on YouTube in a day or two, couple days.
Okay.
Hey, Bobby. That was a great presentation.
Thank you.
Quick question. During your presentation, you said that MOOCs were on their way out, and I know the reason behind a lot of that has been the fact that there hasn't really been a way for them to sustain any type of, or actually make money, in short. But where do you see companies that have become as large as what Coursera and edX now end up in the next 3 to 5 years? Because they do have material that is useful, but it seems like the credit-bearing side of things aren't really reaping.
The question is, where do I see MOOCs ending up in the next 5 years? I don't think the companies are going away. I think the original version of a MOOC is going away, because the other companies like the Blackboards and the Desire to Learns and all of the multiple other companies are addressing the same issue. So if you watch that Coursera just announced 2 programs. One is a specialization program. So basically it's a certificate. So all the other online programs would have called it a certificate. And they also just announced that they're going to be building corporate packages, and Udacity realized that and moved only into that model. So I think you're going to see the people like the Blackboards and the Udacities coming together in the middle in a model that will provide online platforms and content. Whether they're going to be the content developers is still out there to be determined. Yes?
Can
Sorry.
you talk to me a little bit about the future of gaming in education?
Great.
What do you see going there?
Good. I'm a big fan of gaming, and I serve on the advisory board of Glass Labs, which is the EA's foundation for games. However, I'm not a big fan of the current version of gaming we use in schools today. I do believe that the problem with gaming, and I wish I could take credit for this name, but my friend who runs Glass Labs told me the problem with gaming is that we figure out whether the kids are learning when they play games by what she calls interstitials. So they play the game, and then we give them a traditional test to find out what they learned that they should have learned by playing the game, and we as technologists should be smart enough to have programmed the game in the back to collect that information. So when our games get good enough and the artificial intelligence gets advanced enough to be able to play the game, and the game can say at the end, this person learned these problem-solving skills or learned these math skills or these science skills, then I think we'll get to a point that games will be effective in the classroom. So currently they're fun, and I think they are motivational, and I think some of them are phenomenal games. I play them, I'll sit and play Candy Crush or Angry Birds and when I'm bored, but I don't think we're there yet. And I've watched this phenomenon now for a long time. I helped build the first Maxis children's games. So
We got 2 more here, one right here, one up front.
Should have never given me a microphone. So, in the case of my kids who goes to public schools in the suburbs, the pressure seems to be to teach curriculum for test taking. On the other hand, we have entrepreneurs who are trying to come up with innovative ways to deliver education to children. And I was just wondering how you saw, these 2 things kind of coming together, and where you can fit innovation into delivering education against the curriculum, which seems to be going towards more standardized testing.
It's a good question. The question is, how do we take what we're using most of our digital learning for in the testing space, and how do we use it in more innovative ways? Is that what you're...
It's like, how can you fit in innovation in education when so much of the pressure on the instructor is to teach to the test?
Right.
Where's the room to innovate?
Okay, so how do you innovate in a testing culture? And so, to teach different ways. What? Yeah.
What you said.
Yeah.
You should have asked the question.
Yeah. So I don't have the answer, but I do know that I think that we are looking at lots of changes going on in the classroom that will change the way we think about innovation and what we do in the classroom. So how many of you have seen a Star Wars movie? Come on, everybody's seen Star Wars. Well, you know that Star Wars was sold for $4.2 billion to Disney. And George Lucas is now using his $4.2 billion to invest solely in education. And the only thing he is investing in is building problem-based learning curriculum. Because he agrees with you that we want to get kids doing things and solving problems rather than teaching to the test. And his biggest problem is, how do I get people to believe that if they do these problem-based activities and programs, that they're going to be able to take a standardized test. So the problem is not that we can't innovate. The problem is we have to change how we test that learning has occurred. So I think we're going to see a lot of innovation occurring, not because we're pretty innovative in the classroom. I think we're going to see a lot of innovation occurring in how we evaluate that learning and what learning is. So you're going to see changes. $4.2 billion is a lot of money.
Last one was up here somewhere.
This gentleman right here.
20 seconds.
Thanks very much. That was phenomenal. Two quick. To what extent is the sense of urgency you see from the universities? I mean, there's an Atlantic Monthly article talking about they're concerned about it. And the second part is on OER. Are any of these OER organizations have kind of sustainable revenue models, or where do they get the? Or I guess we'll leave it at that.
So I see the universities absolutely in panic about what to do about online learning and digital learning and remote learning. I don't think they know what to do, and that is addressed differently by what type of institution. Obviously, Penn has a different need to change and be more digital, more virtual, more personalized versus a for-profit online university. So you're going to see it goes to the cost reduction. There's a lot of pressure on cost, and I think the winners are going to be that offer quality instruction, low cost. And then in second, the question, your second,
any OERs have sustainable?
Yeah, there are a couple of them that I like that I think are doing some sustainable things. I like Boundless Learning, which is out of Boston. I like Open English, which is an open one out of Latin America, Teach English. And I like CK12, which is a K through 12 open learning platform. And I like Better Lessons. So there are some things going out there that are beginning to have business models. Thank you. We're going to move on to some other things.
Great. Thank you, Bobbi.